Hey guys, Miss V here. Today we're going to talk about cell transport and the types of transport across the membrane. Please make sure that you have gone onto our Google Classroom and went ahead and open up your note template here to take your Cornell notes on the slideshow. I've also attached, as always, the slides that I'm going to use here as well. So let's get started. All right, cell transport. We're going to talk about types of transport across the cell membrane. Remember, our cell membranes are like a bubble. They can go in and out. So we need stuff to go in and out of the membranes. And how does that happen? So our essential question here for our notes today is, what are the ways cells transport molecules in and out of the cell? So we're going to go over a couple of them. Some of them use energy, some of them don't. You'll see how that works, okay? So there's a thing called simple diffusion, which requires no energy, and molecules move from an area of high to low concentration. So this just requires pretty much no energy. So it just happens. So we can see in our little box here, you can watch it. So you can see how it goes from a very small amount and then it just diffuses out. So just like if you opened up, say, a bottle of vanilla or vinegar at the front of our classroom, then it would go out and eventually it would be able to be smelled in the back of the room, okay? So the molecules just simply go out by themselves. It takes no energy to do it. A diffusion, okay, is a passive process, which means no energy used to make the molecules move. They have what they call natural kinetic energy. They just move, and you don't have to know what kinetic energy is. That you'll learn in chemistry. They just move all by themselves. So diffusion is what we call a passive process. It just goes. You don't have to do anything. No one has to make it happen. It just happens. Okay? So diffusion through a membrane is kind of like this. So you have a high concentration where it's really super crowded and it's like, oh, we want out. We don't want to be here. It's kind of like you guys sometimes. It's too small of an area and you want to go to a low concentration where you feel less crowded. It just happens. No one has to make it. It's just what happens. And solute moves down the concentration gradient, which means it goes from a high to a low. And once it's even, once you have the same number of little molecules on both sides, then it just stops. Okay? Osmosis is a type of diffusion, but we use a special word for it because it just specifies to water. So diffusion of water across a membrane, it moves from high water concentration, and the high water concentration here, to a low water concentration. So the solute is our green and the water is here. So there's more gray little tiny circles here, so they will move over here to the low. That's water. Water does a passive diffusion called osmosis all the time. If there's too much water, it'll just flow to the other side, okay? So water's attracted, it's attracted to solutes like salt, so it will also travel to areas of low solute concentration to high solute concentration. Sometimes that happens, okay, but most of the time when we're talking about osmosis, it's going from high to low. Diffusion across a membrane. So this is kind of modeling a diffusion across a membrane, okay? You can see how it's moving across. It's just moving through the lipid bilayer there. And we're going from high water concentration to low water concentration. So there's more of them. And low solutes. Solutes will also go through a diffusion process. They'll go from a low to a high here. We see low solute concentration is here, and it can go to a high solute. So why does this happen? Okay, so this is going to be some of our homework tonight. If you have a high solute concentration, because you can only have 100% of the area done, okay? So if you have a high solute, you're going to have a low water because the solute is taking up all the space, okay? That's like a salt, okay? If you have a low solute, like salt, but you're going to have a high water because it's going to fill up 100% of the space. Always think you're always filling up to 100%. So it depends on how much solute. If you have a low solute, you can put more water in there. If you have a high solute, you can put less water in there. And your homework tonight will really help you start understanding that. Okay? So we always, for water, if we're talking about diffusion of water, osmosis, it'll go from a high to a low. Okay? There's 3 types of solutions that you'll deal with in your homework tonight. The first one is what we call an isotonic, which means a solution whose solute concentration is the same as a solute outside. So when we're talking about naming different solutions, we're not talking about the amount of water, we're talking about the amount of solutes, okay? So an isotonic means the same amount is inside is also outside. So that's when it's just the same, and the solute we'll talk about here is like salt. So when it's isotonic, notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So nothing moves, okay? Nothing moves. Solute will not move because it's even. Hypo, H-Y-P-O, actually means low. So that's how you can remember. Hypo is another one of those wonderful prefixes that we use. And hypo just means low. So a hypotonic is a solution whose solute concentration is lower than the solute concentration inside a cell. So hypotonic, if you see there's 3 out here and there's 5 in here. So if it's a hypotonic, that means the solute is higher in the cell. There's more in the cell. And a hyper, just like hyper, woo, hypertonic. So it just means it has a lot of energy. It has a whole lot more. H-Y-P-R, P-E-R is more. So if it's a hypertonic solution, that means the concentration, or there's more solute outside than inside the cell. As you can see, inside the cell we have 5, and outside we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Cell in an isotonic solution, like we just talked about, it's at equilibrium, nothing moves, nothing goes. Remember, it's only 100%. So if I've got, let's say 100%, you can only put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? 10 molecules of anything in there. So you've got 5 solutes and 5 waters. Here you have 5 solutes and 5 waters, okay, to make 100%. And it's at equilibrium, nothing happens, okay? As water goes out, this guy goes out, this one goes in. So it kind of stays the same. Cell in a hypotonic solution, that means it has low solutes on the outside. If there's low solutes on the outside, okay, that means there's a high water concentration. Think about that. Remember, it's up to 100%. So then that means water will be going in. So what is the direction of water movement? The water is going inside the cell because it's a higher concentration of water outside than inside, okay? The solute concentration is greater inside the cell than outside, therefore water will flow into the cell. And you guys will see how the percentages work on your homework tonight. Hypertonic. Hypertonic means that it's a high solute concentration outside the cell, which means it has a low water. And if it has a low water on the outside, it'll have a high water on the inside of the cell, and the water will come out. So the water is going out of the cell. That's the way it's going because there's more water here because there's less solute taking up the space. Okay. 3 forms of transport we're going to talk about. So there's 3 different types. We can have a passive transport, which is what we talked about with our simple diffusion. Okay, or we'll talk a little bit about facilitated diffusion. That is also passive transport. Remember, passive transport, passive just means it requires no energy. Active transport, active means you have to be active, so you have to use energy. And this ATP, you'll learn a little bit more later what that is, but ATP is the energy your body uses. Okay, so let's talk about simple diffusion as a passive, no energy. So it's a simple diffusion, doesn't require energy, and this is when we move from high to low. Okay, an example is oxygen or water diffusing into a cell and carbon dioxide going out. So that's your breathing is an example of simple diffusion. Okay, so materials move down their own concentration gradient. So they go from a high to a low, okay, through our cell membranes. Okay. Facilitated diffusion is another form of passive transport which requires no energy, but it actually, we call it facilitated because something facilitates the diffusion. Something helps it happen. So it does not require energy, but it uses transport proteins, and you don't have to know what those are, but they are just proteins in your cell membranes to move from a high to a low. So as if it's a molecule that's big, and you can see this is actually glucose. If it's big, then it's going to need a protein to help it go across because it's just too big to simply go out. Water goes out by itself. It's a small molecule. So examples would be glucose or amino acids moving from blood into a cell. So these two have facilitated diffusion, which requires no energy, but they just need a helper to make a hole in the membrane for them because they're just too big to fit. Okay. Types of transport proteins, this is for your guys' information, but there's two of them. We call ones channel proteins. They just look like a channel. It's just like a big tube and things just go through. And they embedded in the cell membrane and have a pore for materials across. So they just stay open. Carrier proteins can change shape to move material from one side of the membrane to the other. So you can see they kind of go in, they close, and then they open to let it out. So there's carrier proteins and channel proteins, okay? Carrier proteins, okay, grab it and move it and then let it go on the other side. And channel proteins pretty much just stay open, okay? Our other form of transport is active transport. So active takes energy, moves, and it's going to require energy in the form of what we call ATP. You'll learn more about that later. But this can actually, if we're doing active transport, moves materials from low to high concentration. So let's say it's waste in a cell that needs to get out, okay? There's not a lot of waste outside the cell because our body's just going to flush that stuff out. So if it's, it can go from a low to a high concentration. Even if it's high in the body, it can pull it out and get it out. So this one can go against the concentration gradient. Remember, diffusion cannot. Passive transport cannot go against the gradient. It has to go from a low to a high. This moves things from a low to a high, but actually this can also go from a high to a low. Okay? High to low and low to high. Okay? So there might be a lot of stuff, I'm sorry, but passive, I probably said it backwards. Passive goes from a high to a low. Active transport is the only one that can go from a low to a high, that there's too much out there, but it can still send it out. And like I said, that's the waste. So we have a little bit of waste here, and it needs to get it out of the cell so it gets flushed out of the body. Okay? Molecules again move through a transport protein, but now energy must be expanded to move them against the concentration gradient. So if we're going against the concentration gradient, we're not going from high to low, we're going low to high, you're going to need energy. Okay? Examples of an active transport that we have inside our bodies is pumping sodium ions out and potassium ions out in against concentration gradient. So as we do some of those metabolism reactions inside our cells, we might have sodium ions, sodium, Na, or potassium Ks building up inside our cells. We can't have those in there. They can make us very sick. So they actually take it out. And it can be high out here in our blood, and then it filters it out and gets rid of it for us, okay? So now that we finished our notes, I want you to go back. You're going to process your notes. You're going to highlight important parts. You're going to underline vocabulary words or unknown words. In the left column, again, you're going to write connections in the left column, either prior knowledge or experience. Then you're going to use all of that to write a 3 to 5 sentence summary of your notes. Use your connections. Use your processing of your notes. Once that is completed, go ahead and turn completed notes into the Google Classroom assignment. Once you're done with that, you're going to go ahead and move on to your homework. So let's go look at that. So you're going to go back to your Google Classroom, and your homework for tonight is right up here. If I can get that to go away, is the osmosis worksheet. So you're going to click on that. You should have your own copy, which you can go ahead and type on. It's a Google Doc. And this is when we're talking about the concentration gradient, and I told you guys about the percentages. So the most important thing is what you can fit into something is 100%. You can't go over 100%, okay? So we're going to go ahead and look at our worksheet here. And as you see at the front, it says below are animal cells placed in beakers of various concentrations. Insert an arrow, which you can do, to show which way the water would move by osmosis. Filling in any percentages, water or solute, whichever is missing. And then you're going to, in the end, identify the type of solution. So you got 3 things you're going to do. First thing you're going to do is you're going to insert an arrow, which way the water is going, not the solute, the water. Then if there's any missing percentages, you're going to fill those in. And you can just put those, I'll show you how to do those. And then you're going to identify the type of solution, isotonic, hypotonic, or hypertonic. So you notice these first ones on the first page, you have all your percentages in there. You don't have to worry about doing that. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to insert an arrow. So we have 90% water, this is the cell, and 10% solute. 90 plus 10 is 100%. And outside here we have 85% water and 15% solute. So the first step you're going to do is insert an arrow of which way the water is flowing. Well, inside the cell we have a higher concentration. Remember, water flows by diffusion or osmosis, and it goes from a high to a low. So 90% is higher than 85. So I would go ahead and you're going to insert a drawing. Okay, sorry. And you're going to click new. Okay, and it should bring up your drawing thing. Okay. Then you're going to, once it kind of opens up for you, it's taking some time here, but what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and click this. Actually, I think it's in here. You should be able, yes. So in the lines, you should be able to have an arrow. So click that. Then you're going to hold down your mouse and you'll make a little arrow. Okay. And this one you can say, you can go down. Okay. Okay. And then once you get the length you like, you're going to let go. It's going to make an arrow. If you want to make it, there you go. That made it a little thicker. Okay. And that's because the line weight, if you want it at 2, you would put it at 2. Whatever you want, you can do it that way. You also have some other options in here. Line start, line end, okay, line dash. Okay, you can do any of that. Once you get your arrow done, you can save and close this, okay. And we should see it pop up onto our worksheet. Okay. See. Boy, this is not behaving. Uh-oh. So sometimes, as you can see, you can make mistakes, right? Especially if your internet is kind of lagging behind here. So we're going to go ahead. Well, we're going to go ahead. I'm not sure what that is, but we're going to cut that one. Okay, we're going to take this one. I'm going to say copy it, and it's not letting me out of the drawing thing. So let me see if I can figure out how to get this to work. Hold on. Okay, so I was just playing with this and I've actually changed it now. So this will be a little bit easier. You're not going to insert any arrows. When you start inserting arrows, it just really screws it up. So instead, you're going to state if the water goes in and out of the cell. So let's go back and I think that'll be a little bit easier for you guys. So let's look at this first one. So we'll click in our box and we need to, our first step is we're going to state, does it go in the cell? And remember, this is our cell. So does it go in the cell or out of the cell? And it's a higher concentration in the cell, so high to low. So it's going to go out. Okay. You don't have to do any percentages. So those are done, so we don't have to answer that one. And the third one is, what kind of solution is it? Is it isotonic, hypertonic, or hypotonic? Remember, the tonics really tell you if it's about the solute. It's not about the water. So does it have a high solute or low solute or the same? So outside it's 15. Inside it's 10, so this is higher. So it is a hypertonic. Oops, I can't even spell. It is a hypertonic solution. So those are the two things you would answer in that question. All right, let's look at the second page as we're going through this. The first page, you're going to do the same thing for each of them. There are no missing percentages. On the second pages, again, it says insert an arrow. We're not going to do that. We're going to say in or out. So the first one is we have some missing percentages. But the first thing we're going to do is which way would water move, but we have to figure out our percentages. So this is 10% solute. You can only add up to 100% on either side. So 100% minus 10% would give me 90%. And the second one is 20%, so this one has to be 80% on the outside. And it is going to move if 90 is inside, okay? And if you get confused, you can always put inside, okay? And 80, then it's going to move out. And it is the solute is higher up here, so it is a, hypertonic, okay? You notice your boxes will just go out. So you're going to do that for each of them. Make sure you designate if it's inside or out, what you guys are telling me, okay? So that is your homework for tonight, so go ahead and finish that, okay? If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will get back to you. Have a great day. Bye.